Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Championship Check-In podcast with myself, Benjamin Bloom, and the great Sam Parkin. Sam, we sit here on a Tuesday morning, and I'm going to hype this up. I think last night in Leeds versus Sunderland, we saw our first pivotal key moment that might be replayed at the end of the season as that's a massive, not necessarily a turning point, but a vital moment, like Chowdhury and all those offline clearances for Leicester or Sarmiento scoring for Ipswich against Southampton last season. I think Pascal Struijk's late goal for Leeds to beat Sunderland is the biggest moment of the season so far. Am I hyping this up for you, Sam? Good morning.
Morning. No, I'd have to agree. These games get so built up, and I didn't think it was obviously a brilliant match because it was one team sat in, and Leeds, obviously, as they have got a habit of doing, just flattering to deceive a little bit, looking like they're running out of ideas. It looked like it may peter out to a 1-0 Sunderland, or maybe they'd get a share of the spoils if they kept knocking long and hard enough on the door. But I don't think anyone anticipated that type of finish. And yeah, for a neutral watching that, the scenes at full time, the jubilation, the faces in the crowd, I don't think anyone could quite believe, the timing of that second one, and especially the goal scorer, in essence, the centre half coming on and having such a great effect was just kind of fairy tale stuff for Leeds in such a big game. So I didn't think it was a brilliant game, but I found the second half quite encapsulating. And yeah, I'd have to agree with you, probably because, Sunderland are a really good outfit. They're very good in every department. They're going to be a real threat and potential Premier League team next year. In the playoffs, if it is to be playoffs, they're going to be a real threat to whoever they come up against. And they've got a great opportunity, you would think, of maybe making it to Wembley and being 90 minutes away. So, yeah, the big story is obviously Leeds marching towards potential promotion, but also Sunderland probably now it's going to be too much to make up. If they won last night, that would have put them in a brilliant position. And I probably spoke a few weeks ago, sorry, I'm rambling a bit here, but I probably spoke a few weeks ago about the fixtures at Sunderland being difficult. Well, actually on reflection, they've got a couple of away games against teams in the top half, a few which they've struggled in that regard to get points. I think they've only won at Middlesbrough against teams in the top half, but some nice looking home games as well. So had they been able to get maximum points last night, it wasn't inconceivable that they could have made the top two. But obviously that's a massive dent for them now.
Yeah, so I agree in terms of the title because they're 10 points behind Leeds now, and there's 13 games to go, and the rate Leeds are picking up points and how focused they are after missing out last year. I don't know whether they're out of the top two race. I totally agree that they're really well coached. However, in that second half, they just couldn't string two passes together. Yeah. Bless them, couldn't they? Leeds were just swarmed all over them. Though Leeds weren't making big chances, Sam, or many chances. I sat there, Sam, at like 55 and said, if this continues, Leeds will score. You can't just defend for an entire half and never keep the ball or have any respite either. Just talk to me quickly before we move on. How many Leeds fans, when Daniel Farke makes a substitution, brings on reasonably, in terms of footballers' age, old central midfielder and a centre-back, doesn't bring any attackers on? It's really hard being the Leeds manager. We love our interactions with the Leeds fans. There's loads of them. They bring great interest and loads of comments, but they're a tough bunch to work for. He needs to take some credit when literally the midfielder comes on and assists the centre-back for the two goals. What a substitution.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing Neil Warnock just on the tail end of the halftime analysis. Just quite black and white. I know that's his kind of way, but he was just like, this is on Daniel now, Daniel Farke. They've not made enough opportunities. They've not tested Patterson enough. He needs to change something quite early in this second half. And it was just quite interesting hearing that from a manager, not going with, a tactical alteration, but just needs to probably freshen it up in terms of
And
personnel.
Warnock would have shook it up, Sam. He would have changed everything and put a grenade under it, wouldn't he?
I think he said maybe 2 or 3 changes, if they don't
Yep.
turn a bit of a corner in the next 10 minutes. I suppose the criticism of Daniel Farke, and to me it was evident a little bit again last night, is you think when it's not working in a certain shape and a certain style, could he roll the dice a little bit sooner and maybe just change the formation just to give the opposition something else to think about? Maybe just stick 2 up front, or maybe go to a back 3 momentarily. They're in such control of the game. You could do all manner of things, maybe just to give it a different look. But you're right, he deserves credit last night. Rothwell's first one. I mean, when that was in flight, I was almost
the throwing cameraman was right behind him. Did you see that angle as well?
I was almost wishing I was out there. It was such a tempting ball to go and attack, and Struijk obviously did it brilliantly. The second one, he comes from really deep, and I think that just disrupts Sunderland because, I think in your desperation, in that type of period in a game, inevitably you're getting across that 6-yard box, you're getting tight to people and getting physical, and it's difficult to arrange sometimes and difficult to be aware of someone coming from that deep position. And it's the way he kind of arrived off the front to get himself into a position, which I think just caught Sunderland out. Also, not sure about the goalkeeper on that one. It's a lovely ball in again from Rothwell, but I just felt that maybe he could have adjusted his position a little bit and maybe made a little bit more of an attempt to get a touch on the ball. But yeah, 2 brilliant assists from Rothwell, and I think he's only had the 2 assists so far this season. So he stepped up on a big night for Leeds, and yeah, it was brilliant scenes. I would be saying this if it had happened at the Stadium of Light or at Bramall Lane. It was just one of those endings to a game for player supporters. They're why we love football, and certainly for the players. I always speak about it. Those last-minute victories, they're the things you remember when you retire and the things that you miss.
So let's close this out on the top 4, Sam. I've already spoken on the hot takes about Burnley and about Sheffield United. And the point you rightly make, Sam, is that at 94 minutes and 50 seconds, it's Sheffield United and Leeds tied on 70 points, isn't it? It's Sunderland on 63 and Burnley on 65. The second that ball crosses the line, the top 4 is split, isn't it? And all of a sudden you have Leeds and Sheffield United and Burnley and Sunderland. And I know you're going to add the massive caveat, Ben, Leeds and Sheffield United play each other next Monday. So guaranteed one or other is going to drop points. But that does split the top 4 in a way that kind of looks like those 2 Yorkshire teams are the ones, doesn't it?
Give me the points quickly, Ben, if you've got it in front of you, because I haven't at this moment.
Right now, they're all played 33, so we've got 13 rounds to play. Leeds 72 and Sheffield United 70. And if you factor in the points deduction, you can argue that Sheffield United are also 7 points better than Burnley in terms of performance. Burnley 65, so it's a 5-point gap from Burnley to Sheffield United, a 7-point gap from Burnley to Leeds, and Sunderland are 8 points off Sheffield United and 10 points off Leeds. So we've got a top 2 and a 3 and a 4. Could change next week. Leeds and Sheffield United draw, and both Burnley and Sunderland win. All of a sudden, we've taken 2 points out of both of them.
I suppose kind of your head's telling you that Sheffield United can't continue to not play at their potential, at their maximum, and keep winning. My thought process would be they're probably going to get better rather than worse. Especially with the players that they've accumulated, the players coming back from injury, etc. So that would be my hunch that they're going to find a little bit of form, having gone through a period where they're still knocking out the victories without being anywhere near their best. So yeah, that would be a little bit of concern. For the others, do Burnley have the potential to turn these draws, turn these low-scoring victories into something more, what's the word I'm looking for? More convincing. I'm not so sure. So that would probably be my where I am today. I just feel that Sheffield United, probably with the squad that they've put together, with their potential to score goals, the potential for the front players to have chemistry, which we've seen in snippets, that would be probably where I'd be. That Sheffield United are probably just on the cusp of maybe finding a little bit more form.
So for the neutral, we want it to be completely the other way round, and we want total carnage. But going into next Monday's head-to-head between Leeds and Sheffield United, for the first time, it feels like we've got a little bit of open water between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And just interestingly, Sam, you and I cover the EFL and sometimes wish it got more coverage. This Burnley thing now is in the wider football world. Everybody knows about Burnley's 0-0 draws and their clean sheets. So the perception around Burnley, even from casual football fans or non-EFL fans, is, as you said, about Burnley. Right.
I think that was the first goal Leeds had conceded as well in 6 or 7 games last night. So they've not been doing too bad. Just finally, I've read a lot about Sunderland's game plan this morning, and I'm not sure you can be too critical of Regis Labrise. I know there will be criticism. I think his substitutions have definitely irked a few of a Sunderland persuasion. I wasn't sure about Abdul Samad going quite high. I think he left Bellingham, didn't he, as one of the holders, and he went a little bit higher, kind of replacing Rigg, which I did question.
They're just trying to press and get away from the goal because they couldn't string 2 passes together. I completely understood his substitution. Can I respond, Sam, by saying I think the last team to go to Ellen Road and try and play Leeds, kind of properly at football was probably Ipswich last December, and they lost 4-0.
Oh, I'm completely with. No, I am
madness to go there, at this level and try and out football them, isn't it?
No, the way to approach it last night was definitely to shut up shop. I'm just talking about a few of his decisions in the second half, latterly when they're on the cusp of achieving it. I thought it was interesting. Second half, Rigg 26 touches, Isidore 27 touches, the fewest on the pitch, and that was their 4-4-2, wasn't it? Without the ball, the 2 central ones who Rigg had that beautiful little slaloming run, didn't he, at the start of the second half when he nutmegged someone and he broke through the press, but that was just few and far between. They just could, so many misplaced passes. You need those two. And it's really hard because I've been that player at Ellen Road to be 9s and 10s out of 10 to get you up the pitch, to just have those virtuoso performances when the setup as such. So I understood him making the changes, but maybe on reflection, he would have done them earlier or done them slightly differently. Interesting hearing Neil Warnock again saying, I think he said at 1-0 up, don't change anything. I think he said that. I was kind of on my phone, and it was obviously post-match by this stage. But I think he was kind of the sentiment that, look, they can't break through. The lad should be good enough, should be fit enough to see it through. So he thought that maybe, I think the changes, unless I'm getting the wrong end of the stick, just disrupted them further. So it's interesting. I don't think there's probably a right or wrong answer. I think ultimately their luck ran out a little bit, and Leeds' continual knocking on the door paid off.
Yeah, agreed. Right, I've got 2 managers to talk about, Sam. Do you want to talk about Luke Williams or Michael Carrick?
Oh, let's talk about the one who's not in his job anymore, shall we?
Go ahead. So Luke Williams sacked by Swansea. Swans 17th, 37 points, which, unless they're absolutely horrible, if they got half a point per game for the rest of the season, they'd land at 43. So they'd have to be abjectly awful, but they're probably not going down. But your reflections on Swansea parting company with Luke Williams?
Yeah, a little bit surprised at the timing. I think, having been there at Ashton Gate last weekend and seen the chest thumping and sign of togetherness, the players in a huddle at full time after a very, impressive away performance, backs against the wall, defended their box incredibly well, got the goal, got over the line in what felt like a game to ultimately save Luke Williams and maybe see him in charge for the rest of the season. A little bit surprised that it's the end now, especially having brought in a new director of football, Richard Montague, who they worked together at Notts County last week. So
really,
that's a baptism of last season or the season before. That's a baptism of fire.
Has he fired him then?
I wouldn't imagine it's come from him.
No,
it would have come from the hierarchy. But yeah, a bit of a baptism of fire for him. Paul Watson left in the last 6 months at some point. He was doing that role, so they've obviously changed in that regard. Probably looking at the bigger picture over the next few transfer windows, but see, Luke Williams not going to be a part of it. I don't think it was sustainable with the results, and also with the comments, obviously, about the West Brom job that obviously upset quite a few. I don't think things have been particularly rosy since then. And also, Ben, I mean, it's a two-way street. The lack of transfer activity, I think, in January and in the summer going into the season left them in a desperately poor state. I don't think the squad's particularly good. I think they're hugely short of goal scorers, attacking options. Throw into the mix that the captain leaves a week or whatever, 2 weeks before the end of the transfer window. I read an article about the club being in chaos. Without knowing the intricacies of how the business is run, I'd have to agree from the outside, looking at the playing squad, looking at a lot of the results, and also looking at your captain leaving to such an integral part of that side. So, God, they're fortunate that they've got that cushion, as you mentioned, because, prior to the Bristol City victory, I would have been very expectant of them having a real relegation battle on their hands. So that was a massive 3 points. See, the nature of the defeat at Stoke has really harmed them once more. And it's cost Luke Williams his job, who's clearly a really talented manager, coach, very likeable, as are a lot of his staff. So I don't think that can ever come into the equation. I don't think there's been probably a real breakdown in relationships. I just think it's not a particularly good squad. I don't think it was added to adequately. And I don't think Luke's probably got some of his decisions right maybe in the last few weeks. And he's got to take, obviously, a share of the blame. But I think the problems are greater than who's in charge. And I don't know if you've got an idea about what will happen now, but
Russ Martin, Stevie Cooper on the way back.
I can't see. I think, Russell Martin was obviously
not the way he left. No,
involved with the chairman when he left, so I couldn't see that one. I think Russell Martin would probably harbour hopes of getting a job that would be easier to walk in and not have so much disruption and so much uncertainty and so much criticism.
He's got a promotion on his CV now, hasn't he? So those managers expect a team that could fight for promotion, don't they?
Yeah, but if they lose the next few, they're still in a very precarious position. Well, so I am surprised at the timing.
Well, that I agree with you on, because we're trying to figure out where the kind of, and look, it could be in the relegation zone, Sam, that we have a bottom three adrift and then a 5-point gap or something. But the way the likes of Pompey are putting points on, you can see Stoke have won 2 and 3. Cardiff have had a little lift. They're all above the 1 point per game, and we tend to like Hull's squad. So you could get a surge, but of course, if the surge is everyone other than the bottom three, then that won't affect Swansea at all. But yeah, it's not over, but they could certainly do with getting over that 40 and sticking a couple of wins on in the next 3 or 4 games just to go, okay, we're out of this. But then last season, Sam, we said a few times, Plymouth are out of it, Birmingham are out of it, and we got to that last day and none of them are out of it. So you never know how it could go.
I think just finally on Swansea, sorry, I think, going into the season, the way that they started, I think it took us all by surprise just how defensively sound they were. I think having seen Luke Williams' team at Notts County, seeing the amount of goals that they scored, the creativity they played with, we probably expected it to be of similar ilk to that. And it really hasn't been. And it's been although they've lost their way defensively, in the last month or two, it's been pretty desperate, the amount of goals they've been conceding. I do think they have it in their armoury, as they showed at Ashton Gate, to get clean sheets, to have those defensive displays where Darling and the like, Cabango, are at the top of their game. I think Delquar has been a decent signing as well. It is blindingly obvious to me that they're not going to score many goals, and there's a real lack of options. Bianchini, with Potnick. Cullen, 9 goals, done pretty well, considering they need help in that department and in the creative aspects of the game as well. So I think they'll be all right. And I think they'll be all right with whoever takes the reins till the end of the season. But it's going to be by winning a few grubby home games, 1-0, the odd low-scoring draw away from home. This isn't going to flip, I don't think, overnight, and they're all of a sudden going to become a Swansea of old. It's going to be quite a long process to get back there if they can do.
So Middlesbrough lose again, and we've kind of got a little bit of clarity on this because Steve Gibson has come out and backed Michael Carrick, saying there's no plans to change anything now. But let me try and frame this so we don't have the same conversation everybody else is having, Sam. I think everybody agrees that probably outside of the parachute teams, Norwich, Middlesbrough and Coventry have got nice squads that you'd think, maybe West Brom as well, that would be challenging. So for what Middlesbrough have got, 44 points at 32, okay, they're still only 4 off the playoffs, but they're in poor form, 4 straight defeats, fans kind of, not overly enamored with it. Let me ask you then, what would it take for Michael Carrick to do between now and the end of the season for you to say at the start of next season, okay, I'm buying this. I still believe in Michael Carrick like I did in that first 2/3 of a season where he was absolutely brilliant with Akpom, Ramsey, Archer, etc. What would it take for him to win back these Borough fans?
Cool. That's a tough question to answer, I think, because it feels like there's no margin for error right now. So if they were to lose the next 2 or 3 games, I think inevitably in football, despite the comments of the chairman, I think it was yesterday, whoever's come out and backed him, it's very difficult for any manager at any level to keep their jobs. If you're talking about 6 consecutive defeats, 7 consecutive defeats,
with that squad.
Yeah, that is just the unwritten rule in football. And I think that the criticism has got quite strong in that part of the world. So just think how it would be if they suffer a couple more consecutive defeats. So I think we're probably talking about playoffs here, to answer your question. Probably talking about playoffs and probably giving themselves a good account of themselves as well in that playoff campaign if they were to make it. I think probably the nature of the league at the moment is probably going against Michael Carrick in that there's a great opportunity for teams to cement themselves in the playoffs, and they're not grabbing that opportunity with both hands with the resources that they've clearly got above some of the other competitors. Having spent money on Morgan Whittaker, having brought in a number of decent players over the last few windows. Looking in from the outside, I didn't really understand the Matt Clark sale or allowing Matt Clark to leave. I think that left them a little bit short defensively. I think it's hugely disrupting to lose your best goal scorer in the middle of the season and not adequately replace him as such. I don't know the injury that Riley McGree's been struggling with, but I think at times he's quite influential for Middlesbrough. Doak's missed the last few as well. So I think there are circumstances that I'm trying to present here that could change and alter the path if these guys are to get back going and get back playing and then rediscover a little bit of form, as a collective, because I think defensively they're obviously lacking a little bit of solidity at the moment as well. So I think there's a number of factors going on, but ultimately they're not winning games. They've replaced Latte Lath with Iheanacho. I think very different types of players. I like Iheanacho in terms of his hold-up. I like watching him at Leicester at times last season, but there's not that definitive goal threat that you get with Latte Lath and what he'd provided across the last 18 months or so. So massive for Michael Carrick to get, I think, a victory of the next 2. Otherwise, the sentiment from the hierarchy at the club yesterday will probably alter in time, I'd imagine.
Yeah, very much so. Get involved in the comments if you're a Middlesbrough fan. Give us your thoughts on Carrick. If you're a Swansea fan, give us your thoughts on the decision for Luke Williams to be sacked and who you might like to replace him. And if you're a fan of one of the top 4 teams, give us your thoughts on any of anything we've discussed. If we haven't mentioned your team and they won at the weekend, I've probably spoken about them in the Hot Takes video on Sunday, and Sam will speak about them in due course. So apologies, particularly if you're a Pompey fan, a Stoke fan, QPR. Sam always speaks about QPR. Watford all had good wins. Right, Sam, are you ready for the quiz to finish off this podcast? I will ask you first, and I promise I haven't read this. Best and worst versus the best, the top 4. Your question for Sam, can you name 3 of the 6 teams with the best points per game in their games against the top 4? Who's done well against the top 4? The answer is probably nobody, given the giant points gap you were talking about last week. But you're going to have a go about this. Who has?
That's tough, isn't it? That's really tough. That is absolute stab in the dark type scenario. Okay, I know Millwall beat Leeds and Burnley. I'm going to go straight in with Millwall.
Do that, because they actually have by far, by orders of magnitude, the best points per game against the top 4. And I'm going to try and help you a bit. It's 1.75, the PPG against the top 4 for Millwall. So you're talking about some draws basically now.
I can't think of anyone who's beat. Let me try and think. Okay. They're normally competitive. Oh, God. It's really hard. I will go for... Who have Sheffield United lost against? What about Stoke?
Stoke are not there, Sam. So you got one more guess. You're 1 for 2, and you got one more guess.
Stoke beat Sunderland at home, didn't they? That was what I was going on.
They did.
This is really difficult. Really difficult. Let me try and think about who they've been defeated by. Right, by the West Brom.
Yes. West Brom are there. They've got 5 points from 5 games. So 1 point per game. So you got 2 for 3, Sam. Millwall was the top answer. So well done for getting that. Blackburn. I don't know who Blackburn beat in there, but they've obviously probably beaten. So they got 6 points from 6. West Brom, Preston. We've got 4 points in 5. We're nicest guy in jail territory here. It's only 0.8 points per game. QPR have got 3 points in 4 against the top 4. Middlesbrough have got 5 points in 7. I think Middlesbrough beat Sheffield United earlier in the season at the Riverside. Right, what do you got for me, Sam? By the way, these questions, as with every week, come from our great friend Fev at Fev's Football Analytics.
You have got, can you name 3 of the 6 teams with the worst points per game in their games against the top 4 this season? 3 guesses to get the worst 3 in their fixtures against the top 4.
Oh, God. So someone might... Surely Plymouth, having got hammered 5-0 at home to Burnley, are in there.
Let me give you a little clue. There's 4 teams that are yet to get a point.
Are Plymouth one of them?
Plymouth are not one of them.
Oh, for God's sakes. Surely Derby haven't got any points against this lot, have they?
Derby are there, but they've got 1 point.
But so I get a tick for that one, though, yeah?
You get a tick, yeah. So Derby are one of 2 teams that have accrued 1 point. The other 4 still stuck on 0.
I'm just going to go with Luton because they're bottom of the table, Sam.
Luton are there with no points from 6 games. Funnily enough, Derby 1 point from 7 games. So they, 0.14 points per game. Right, the others with no points are Cardiff from 5 games, Sheffield Wednesday from 5, the aforementioned Swansea from 5, and you got Luton and Derby and Oxford United are the other team that have got 1 solitary point.
There you go. Thank you, as ever, Fev, for the questions. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I think we are going to be on Tuesday again next week. I'm sure you'll understand we're going to wait for the Leeds Sheffield United game to be played, because obviously that's massive. They are the top 2 as things stand. And in fact, they are guaranteed to be going to be first against second, whatever Burnley do prior to that. Get your thoughts in via the comments on what we've spoken about today. We're about to film the predictions, which will come out tomorrow, so you can check that out. I'll be here with the hot takes on Sunday, and Sam will be back next Tuesday. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you then.